Hi, everybody. You are listening to Judging Meghan with your host, Meghan Judge. I am, I just can't seem to start a podcast without issues. I think for the past solid couple months, I don't know what's going on. But I am really excited to interview my guest today. I'm very excited to talk about what we're going to talk about. I was on her podcast earlier in the week. We're going to talk all about women and friendships and all the fun stuff that she likes to talk about on her amazing podcast. But before I say that, do me a favor. If you have been listening to my podcast and you like it, or if you don't like it, don't say anything. But if you do like it, do me a quick favor, leave a quick review. It's super easy. Go to Apple, Spotify. You can leave reviews. Also, I have been told from my beautiful friend Nina, who I'm about to introduce, that some of if you're subscribing, there's been issues with people losing their subscriptions. So if you do subscribe on Apple, wherever you subscribe, and you might not be seeing my new episodes coming out every Tuesday, just re-click at the top and hit subscribe and there. And I'll send you the check in the mail, listeners. I just don't, it might take a while, but I promise it's coming. I'm just kidding. We've all been put here for a reason, and we all deserve acceptance.
Judging Meghan with Meghan Judge.
I'm a trauma survivor from a really young age, and I have been diagnosed with complex PTSD in the past few years. I've been surrounded by death and abuse much of my life. I've been dragged through the mud and have been to the point of not wanting to go on anymore. Through my interviews with other survivors, I've learned that there is a way out. From recovering to surviving and thriving, we all have the strength to come out the other side.
You are listening to Judging Meghan.
I am so thrilled to introduce Nina Badzin. She has been writing about friendship since 2014. She hosts the podcast Dear Nina, Conversations About Friendship, and runs a Substack by the same name. She's a mom of four. My goodness, I'm one of four teenagers in Minneapolis, and you can find her on Instagram at Dear Nina in a Friendship. Hello, Nina.
Just Dear Nina Friendship.
Oh, it says Dear Nina. Oh, I read it wrong.
Does it? Okay. I'm like, I hope it doesn't, but yeah, no.
My eyeballs
no
not working. Okay, well, I seem to always be able to streamline an intro perfectly, and we'll just leave it at that. Dear Nina Friendship. You know what I read, Nina? This is my ADD or dyslexia or whatever, reaching out to me again and tapping me on the shoulder. I wrote in my head, I saw Dear Nina, Inna.
Oh, funny. I get it. That makes sense.
Get it?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to justify who I am and why I do the things I do. Nina, I feel like we're old friends and we've known each other for 30 years.
And it's been a minute. That's it. Isn't that funny?
We met, and I'm going to have to give a shout out to Diana. We met through this wonderful lady, Diana, that came on my podcast and kind of helps me with publicity stuff. And I love her. And she follows Nina and was reached out to her and got me on your show. And then we became fast friends. So welcome.
Thank you. In real life, it is very generous. Well, this is real life too, but it's the online version is very generous for someone to do that because not everybody does that. And we're just going to dive right in. There's so many friendship topics, but a big one is coming from sort of a scarcity mindset about friendship or an abundance friendship. And this is more what on a work angle, what Diana did, but it's this idea that there's so much out there, so much to give. And you want to connect people or do you like to hoard people for yourself? And that's a big one just right there. So what Diana,
let's just talk about that really quickly. So, and we'll get into it, but it is so true. I have to remind myself. That's why I started this thing, Nina, and you'll get a shout out in upcoming weeks. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Where I do women supporting women on Fridays. And I do a quick little story about a women run business or something, anything. It could be any female that's trying to do something. And I do it for podcasters. I'm you're not my competition. Everybody's voice matters. And if you want to start a podcast about dog food or whatever it is, I'm here for it. Your voice matters. Like, do you agree with that? I think it's super important.
Oh, yeah. And listen, there are a handful of people in the friendship space specifically, and some of them came on way after me, and some of them have been writing about friendship longer than I have. And I think it's always important, just even that little niche kind of thing, that you come at it with a generous spirit. I do. I have them on my podcast. I read their books. I promote their books. I don't act like, oh, if somebody else is interested in friendship and now they're going to go to that person and not me. No, we're expanding the topic. And same, like even just podcasts in general, by being generous about sharing other podcasts and stuff, you're just introducing more people to podcast listening as a form of entertainment.
And also like I do that for mental health too. I mean, the more people that talk about their mental health, because that's what the gist of my podcast is, the better it is. The less, the more suicide prevention we're helping like people live and be here. And talking about friendship is super important, right? And we're going to get into that. We're going to dig into it.
I'm ready.
Go ahead. I interrupted you. I'm such a freaking big.
No, I don't think you did. I was just thinking that people can be, and we have to fight our instincts. Like, and when I say people, I include myself, can be very territorial about friends, about work, about everything. And that's the scarcity mindset. There is only so much to go around. And if somebody else takes, a bigger piece, then my piece is smaller. Right. And then a more abundance mindset is, oh, like, let's using a pie. I guess I'm using a pie here. The pie just gets bigger. So it's not that the pieces get smaller, it's that the pie grows. And it's a completely different way of approaching the world. And I find myself enjoying my friendships personally with people who are coming from a bit more of an abundance in all things, that you can tell when someone is feeling like you're taking something from them, and then that doesn't really end up working out. So anyway, I came to that because I was thinking of Diana, and it's just really nice when people make connections for you, whether it's work, whether it's social. That is a nice kind of person to get close to. It's a good sign of somebody's kind of well-being.
I think too, it's like karma. Like I always talk about like points in heaven with the big man upstairs. Like that's what we're supposed to do as human beings. We're supposed to like pay it forward and support other people. And like we're all human beings. So especially we're going to talk about women, but there's a lot of jealousy that can go like I'm human. So sometimes I have to take a step back and be like, oh, that person's doing better than me. I mean, I'm a human being.
Yeah.
Right. And that's fine to be like that. But I found that when you're instead of like being like in your head and going to the place of like, I'm not where I want to be right now. And this isn't where like I want to be like the top 0.5% of all podcasts. I want to be in the top 100 of all podcasts. It takes time to do this stuff, and you can say that too. And your time will come. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. If like anything else, like I'm trying to write a book. Is the book ever going to be done? Eventually I might be really old.
That's okay. People take a long time. I'm thinking about an episode I did that was really popular. I had my best friend on as a guest because she has been quoted in my column since 2014 because she's so reasonable and rational, and I'll call on her sometimes. We did an episode called Friends Will Hang Out Without You. It's not, what do I do if friends hang out without me? It's not, will friends hang out without me? It's friends will hang out without you, because they will. And it's the same idea of coming at it with a certain kind of generous spirit. It's so funny. I'm being like all spiritual today. I don't normally talk this way, but
this is what I do to people.
I know. It's just
I'm joking.
It's your essence. But if you are the kind of person who likes to occasionally have a one-on-one moment with a friend, which many of us do, if you enjoy having that quality time where you're not fighting to hear, think about when you're at a restaurant with 5 other people. I mean, you cannot hear, the conversation cannot go that deep. So if you enjoy that, then you have to allow for your friends to also do things without you, right? Like you can't want for yourself what you aren't willing to give to other people. It's just back on that same theme of
it's a great point. I mean, part of like my story, which everyone, when the podcast comes out, I'll share it. And a lot of my listeners have heard my story, obviously like beaten it to death. But you have to get to a place like you're not going to be invited to everything. And like when I went through like the Karen friend breakup, like the basis of like the final straw was being left out of like a thing. And it was just after being treated so badly for so long, like being left out of things or talked about or whatever it was. So that's okay. Like, I'm fine with not being included in everything, but it's just the way that people do it. You know what I'm saying? It goes into
Yeah.
like the piece of social media and all of the stuff that we struggle with as women and humans. Being left out is not a good feeling, but you're not going to be invited to everything. You
No, you're
know,
not. Yeah. When
you're
it's
just,
systematic, like it was in your story, that's a
Mhm,
little different, that's,
mhm.
but it's more like allowing the occasional, people get together without you. And I think it starts when our kids are young. And if we get hysterical every time our kid is not included in something, instead of kind of giving, it's very hard, but it's best to give over the attitude of, let's say your kid comes home from school and they saw that two other kids were going home together for a play date. It's not anything to get hysterical about, but a lot of times as moms, we do, and we give over the message that if you are not in everything, that it's a crisis. Instead of being like, oh, that's so nice that so and so are getting together. Remember when you got together with Molly last week and you guys had so much fun and it was just the two of you? Like that same idea that for our kids, like, hey, it's also nice to get together in small groups. So if you didn't want 25 kids at your house every time, so too do your friends want to get together in smaller groups sometimes. That's different if it's systematic, meaning like you're never included. If you're never included, this is the wrong group for you. It's the wrong
I
group.
think that this is a great point for parents because you have four teenagers, and I know we're like going to get into your story. I tend to do this where I go off on tangents, but I have to be better about teaching my kids that, and they don't get invited to everything, and that's fine. But as parents, like, I found, and I think we talked about this on your podcast, but I found that like parents are so desperate to get their kids included in everything. So their
Yep.
kid is in quotes cool. My
Yes.
oldest daughter, she would kill me if she heard this, but she like didn't. Like I think some of the backlash of like the Karenhood like went definitely affected my daughter. And she just graduated. I've talked about this on the podcast, talked about it on yours as well. And she's going to be I'm starting to like, even though she's 14 and she's driving me like batshit crazy, she's I'm proud of her because like she is coming into her own, and I've already noticed it just being out of school for 1 week. It's like, but you can't as a parent be like, Debbie was mean to somebody, but I don't care. I'm not going to say something to Debbie's mom because I want to keep getting. Now I'm going into another topic. I just want Debbie to keep getting included, but
Yeah.
Debbie's being an a-hole to somebody else's kid, but I'm going to overlook it because I just want my kid to be a cool kid. Well, you're not as a parent teaching them the most important lesson in life, which is like becoming like a good human being later in life. Don't
Well,
you agree?
well, yes, I agree. And standing up for yourself. I'd be teaching my kid, the nice thing about having four kids, you're one of four, so your parents can understand this, is I feel bad for my older two, but I definitely made mistakes with them that I learned better with the younger two. And I actually think parents should try to get out of this stuff as fast as possible. As young as you think as your kid is emotionally ready, that they stand up for themselves, that you don't get involved with the other parents. And because the truth is, we all know if you have kids, you can only do so much to control how your kid treats other people. You teach your kid to follow their gut or learn their lesson from being treated badly and to make different friends and not be desperate to get into a certain group. But
Mhm.
nobody's mom or dad is actually going to be able to really control what goes on at school or what goes on at sleepovers or whatever. It's teach your kid to learn what it feels like to be treated well and to seek those people out. But you're not going to change how all these group dynamics work. I think parents are very delusional about that. I include myself. I have done that. I have gotten involved and really regretted it. And then you see what happens if over the years you are pulling the strings and asking favors and getting your kid invited and making sure so and so is nice to your kid has not made a true friend. Your kid has a parent who's like threatened them to take their phone away or something unless they're nice to your kid. That's not a true friend. That's just getting your kid, like you said, included in this group that for some reason you're attached to as a parent?
I don't know what it is. It's a very weird dynamic. But I'm going to take a turn because I want to go into all about Nina.
Oh,
it's
okay,
all
nice.
about Nina.
I can do that all day.
Kidding. But I do want to ask, number one, I love, love, love what you do. I mean, I just think it's so important. And when I happened to talk to Diana and she put me in touch with you, and she was like, Meghan, you need to like share your story on this podcast. And this is a great podcast. And then I talked to you and I listened to your podcast. I can't tell my listeners enough. Like, if you do struggle in life with female friendships or friendships in general, I strongly, strongly suggest that you go and check out her podcast. It's great.
Thank you.
But I just love what you do. I think it's really, really important. And we need to, as women, and I hate to leave out the men but men just deal with friendships in different ways. We kind of touched on when I first talked to you about at a young age, we're pinned up to like kind of, I don't know if it's like the background of like being like needing a boyfriend or caring about what boys think or what it is, where like the bully component comes in and all that stuff. But I would love for you to talk about, number one, why you started the podcast, and then kind of share your own friendship story. And we can go into that. That was long-winded as usual.
Oh, no, this is great. So I think what was actually an organic way that I landed into this topic, but I'm really a writer first and foremost. I should be clear to your listeners. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a social worker. I don't call myself an expert. I call myself really a friendship enthusiast. That's a topic I've been extremely into for, as we said, since 2014. That's 10 years. I've read everything there is to read, and I've been talking about these topics a long time, and people write to me anonymously. But how did I get into that? Again, as a writer, I had a column in a parenting magazine when the kids were really young, and I was doing the regular column about not really my kids necessarily, but of course, just like I did here already, you end up bringing your own family and stories into it. And I was writing other freelance work for all kinds of websites. My oldest was about 10 years old, and I had done a spoken word show. I was in a cast of Listen to Your Mother. I don't know if you've heard of Listen to Your Mother. It's all around the country. You don't travel. I mean, you're in your city. So Minneapolis had their first show in 2013. And I did what I thought was a fairly hilarious, and it was, essay about my son totally botching his piano recital, but then coming out resilient on the other side. And honestly, not that different than what we were just talking about with wanting to fix everything for your kids' social issues. Same thing. The essay was sort of a funny thing about me, not about my kid, of wanting so badly to go up there and literally put my hands over his hands. Like, that's what my instinct was. Of course, I forced myself not to. So the entire essay is like self-talking of me talking myself out of rescuing him. And in the end, he must have started over 15 times, but he did. He got through it. And still, I sweat to this day every time we're at any kid's recital or anything. But I did that in front of 700 people, and it was on YouTube and everything. And a friend of mine came to pick me up for a walk, and he answered the door, and she's like, "Oh, Sam, I loved your mom's story about your piano recital." And he looked me dead in the eye, and he was like, "You wrote about that?" And he knew I was a writer. And I'm like, not only did I write about it, I performed it in front of 700 people. I didn't tell them that. And it's on YouTube. That was something went off in me at that point, and I was like, and scene on writing about the kids. Done. No more writing about the kids. When it was kind of coming to a close anyway with that parenting column, 2 women I knew who I had mentored when they were starting their blogs. This is now 2013, 2014. We're in the blogging era. I mean, that is the big era. And I also had a blog and wrote for many blogs. And they were starting a website that was mostly focused on friendship. And they knew I liked friendship. I'd written some essays about friendship. And they were like, "Will you be our friendship advice columnist?" So this is now 2014. And I'm like, I'm not a therapist. I felt kind of, imposter syndrome on that. And they were like, "No, that will make that part of the thing. That will be the point. We're not going to pretend you're a therapist. We're going to say Nina's just a regular person with a lot of opinions and a lot of practicality." And advice had been, I had a baby name advice column in a different website. I wrote a whole thing for a writing website with Twitter advice for writers. So I guess advice and that tone is such a fun tone to write in. It's very different than a reported piece, very different than a personal essay, because you get to use you. You get to write like in the second person. So I really enjoyed that. I really took to it. And I was their columnist for about 4 years. And then they decided to shift their website to broaden it and do more things. And they were like, you can keep your content though. So I took it, which was so generous. So I took it all and put it on my own site. I didn't like try to shop it around or anything. I mean, I was having more kids. I just didn't have time for that. And I just did it myself. And then COVID happened and it was like 2020. And I was leaving my friends all these voice memos and we were doing Marco Polo. Did you ever do Marco Polo?
Like in a pool?
No, that's a great question and a fair question because that is a pool game.
No, I'm joking. I have one of my college friends sent me it once and I like downloaded it and then I never used it again.
Yeah. You know, anytime there's a third party app, like everybody has to really buy into it, right? It's not if it exists within your Apple stuff, it's fine. But if it, but we did it for a while because, and at first we had a big sense of humor about it, all of us, because this is the early days of COVID, hard to remember, but it was like, okay, it's going to be a couple weeks. And then it was like a couple more weeks. And so we were communicating on Marco Polo, which are video messages. Well, over time, as we were all still in lockdown, other people kind of stopped leaving the messages. But there was me, like day after day, leaving these video messages. And finally, I realized I need a podcast. Like clearly, I'm looking to.
So funny. By the way,
it's true. It's like I'm looking to talk, and my poor friends need a break from me.
Yeah.
They didn't say it, but like they didn't, they kind of stopped responding. I've told that story before, and one of my friends heard it, and she texted me. She's like, "I really liked your messages," and I'm like, "Thank you," but no one really responded after a while.
Can I just interrupt you for a second and make you feel better? I was not only was I drooling in a corner in COVID, but just being the actress that I was, like I was a theater major in college. I acted my whole life and saying, remember the Tiger King with Carol Baskin?
Oh, yes.
So during COVID, I started doing videos, Nina, of me pretending I was in the Tiger King and I was Carol Baskins.
Oh
and I was posting them like a complete lunatic on Instagram, like wherever I could post them, because I was like, here I am. I'm going to be an influencer on TikTok. I didn't even know what it was. And my sister, Peggy, my older sister, and her husband thought they were the funniest things ever. But in the very beginning ones, I would get like a ton of likes and then they just drizzled down.
Right. Yeah. That's kind of what happened to me.
People would be like, same thing. Same exact thing. It's so funny to hear that though.
Oh, I'm glad you can relate. So at the beginning of 2021, I was dreaming of the podcast, and it took me months to get up the courage to do it. And not just the courage, but to actually learn the tech and figure out, what do I want it to be called? What do I want the logo? I mean, you know how it is. I mean, you really know. It takes a while. So by the time I was up and running and recording, it was the middle of 2021. And remember, I'd consistently been writing about friendship since 2014. So I had so much content. And I was really brave, I think. I pitched people and, towards the early end, I had some, author friends, I'd been in the writing world for a long time. And then I pitched Gretchen Rubin and she said yes, which was super nice of her because I was a very small podcast at the time, but then that helped me get other guests. That's how it goes. Then, and now, I get tons of pitches and it's actually like almost a problem. Like it's a good problem to have. And I still trying to remember, remember the old days when I would actively pitch people? Like I really enjoyed that because then you were in the dreaming stage of what you want to do. But it is sort of crazy to think that I have not run out of material after all these years. I thought I would just be using all my old material. It's actually just constantly new stuff because it's timeless and it's ageless. I hear from people from their teens all the way through probably their 80s. My mom's getting close to 80 and I feel like her cohort, is aware of me too. And so I'll talk about, she's been out a bunch of times also. So I talk about anything that is friendship related and it doesn't have an age limit. People get left out. People are looking to make new friends. People get divorced. And so they're starting over. They move to a new city. They retire. So now they have new time on their hands. any number of reasons people either find that they are looking to make friends, they want to know how to keep their friends, or they also want to know how to move on from a friendship that is plaguing them. And those are the 3 buckets I really cover.
Can you tell me like your own friend story? Because I think was it in 2014 and that's why you started writing about it? And then I know like the friend you ended up kind of making up. I don't want to tell the story, but I would love for my audience to know why you really got into this space.
Well, it's interesting. And nothing specifically happened in 2014. I have a couple like probably big friendship moments, but I will start by saying friendship was always really important to my parents. And I've learned in doing this work that that is not true for everyone at all. I mean, I used to resent it, I think, when I was younger. Like I had a lot of babysitters on the weekend. I'm the way youngest of 3 kids. And so I just felt like I was left home alone a lot. And, or I'd come back from overnight camp and my parents would be like, we have tickets to, the theater. I grew up in Chicago. Like, we'll be back at 10:30. Like they were very social. And they were like partiers. They were very cultural. They had tickets to all kinds of theater stuff. They loved museums. They're busy with their friends, bridge groups and book clubs. And I was surrounded by what I consider aunts and uncles that weren't my aunts and uncles. So when I got married very young at 23, which is pretty young these days, like right out of college.
Yeah.
And we moved to his hometown, Minneapolis. We met when he was in grad school and I was in college in St. Louis. So I'm from Chicago, met him in St. Louis, Brian, and then we moved to Minneapolis. So when we got here, I was like, okay, like now we make couple friends. That's all I knew. I mean, I was like, that's what my parents had. My parents just had a million couple friends. So I kind of set about to do that. He'd been gone for 10 years. So Brian really didn't have a ton of friends here anymore. And I was like, okay, you start a book club. I mean, it was all very like 1950, but that again was just modeling after my parents. It took a while though, and it took much longer than it had ever happened. Because I grew up, I mean, my mom still lives in the house that I grew up in. And so I had all my childhood friends. I made really close friends in college. And then I moved to this new city and I thought I was quite likable, but people were not that interested in me. I think I was kind of a lot. I think Minneapolis is even like more Midwest than, I came from Chicago. Like, I think I was just real strong and it took me a bit. And also a lot of people grew up here, went to college around here, went to camp together, still live here. And so they understandably didn't have as much space for a new friend, which I used to really resent, but having done this work for so long now, I actually get that. I also have a lot of friends now and can't have coffee with someone new every 3rd day. Like I can't. So yeah. I get that. So I had to learn to make friends with people who did have room in their life. And so that's part of my, passion for, I see a lot of, there's really no nice way to say this, like kind of victim mentality when it comes to friendships. And it's like, why me? Why won't people be friends with me? And it's like, there are so many people out there looking for friends, so many. And so I really encourage people to like, you be the initiator. Like when you want to have plans, like you make plans, you don't wait. But I had to answer a different question about friendships, 2 very painful friendship breakups, one that ended in an amazing reconciliation and one that never did. And I think that those 2, one was when I was 18 and one was right after college. So one right after high school and one right after college. And the one right after college, we reconciled. The one after high school, I think actually fueled this whole thing. When I'm really thinking about it, I actually wrote a novel kind of based on that never went anywhere. I got very close to getting an agent. The agent had me rewrite it like 3 times. And the 3rd time, she still didn't like it. And I was so over it by then. And then I started blogging and all that. So those breakups, though, I think were very instrumental too in having a lot of thoughts about friendship. So that's pretty much the whole thing.
I think that that's so interesting. I'm just relating to you in so many ways. Like I say this a lot, and I think I said it on your podcast when I meet certain people in life. I'm like, you had me at hello. And it's always the joke from Jerry Maguire. Yeah. You're one of those people. Like
thank you.
Like I can relate to you in so many ways. My parents were very, very social, always having dinner parties, always had babysitters, grew up with like, our best friends, like families, like, going on trips. We were just always like that until like I lost my dad at 13 and then it was very different. But so I think in my head, I expected that too. I was like,
and I've done it, Meghan. I do want to say I have done that. Like
Yeah.
my kids have had a lot of babysitters and I have no regrets. Like I'm glad my life is full of friends. I didn't mean
No,
to
it's
interrupt you, but
yeah. Yeah, it's great to have friends, but like looking back on some of the decisions I've made in my I mean, I hate to bring this up because it's like beating a dead horse, but my listeners know like my whole story of like my friend breakup and all of that. Um, I look back on my life then compared to now, and I really limit my social life. Like, whereas before, all I did was go out. Like, I had to have plans every Thursday night, Friday. If I wasn't doing something on the weekends and we weren't like meeting for like a beach day or doing something, I was like, oh my God, I'm being left out. I'm not like part of this dumb thing. Whereas now I'm like, I genuinely like being with my kids, except like when my teenager's being mean. We spend a lot of time
Yes,
together as a family. I mean, a lot. And I know that these years are going so quickly that it's
they
like I
do.
kind of had to like learn a lesson from all of that on top of just like the friend breakup, but also that I need to spend more time with my kids and they are
Yes.
what really matters. And that doesn't mean that I don't have a social life. Like I definitely like do, but it's not like what I thought I had to have like and be like my mom who was like always entertaining and always having dinners and and something else you said that struck me was and pretty funny is my mom's 80 years old and she still talks to me about like, oh my God, my mom works at Chico's part-time still.
Amazing.
She's 80. She works like one day a week. And
Keeps her
she's like,
young, probably,
she does. She
out and
likes to like
social.
work the like register and all that. And she's like, there is so much drama. Just so you know, somebody was supposed to bring a bundt cake into and everyone knows that I always make the egg casserole. Like there's still there's still
So
drama
funny.
going on with my 80-year-old mom.
Listen, we
Yeah.
learn from our parents, and I think we do things opposite. I'm much more balanced than my parents on it. We are also, Brian and I are more religious than either of our parents were, meaning we're Jewish, and
Hmm.
we are more observant. That's usually, we don't like use the term religious when we say that we're more observant of the customs and the laws than our
Yeah.
parents were. So my parents went out both nights of the weekend, Friday night, Saturday night. I mean, we are home with our kids on Friday night. We have Shabbat dinner every single Friday night. I mean, we don't miss a single one. So and I would never go out on a Thursday night because I'm cooking. Like Thursday, I wouldn't even consider going out on a Thursday night. It's like I would be so stressed on a Friday trying to I make like half the meal Thursday for Friday. So
By the way, I
I
love that you do that. I think that's
oh
amazing.
thanks.
Yeah.
It's funny because
Super important.
that didn't come up on my podcast. There's no reason it would. So there's no reason you would know that. But yeah, so we are home Friday nights. My husband goes to synagogue every Saturday, has taken the kids during the day. I usually stay home and just read and whatever, but we have kept the travel sports down to almost nothing. Like we'll make exceptions, but we can't have 4 kids in travel sports and be Shabbat observant. Like we can't possibly. So we really go out on Saturday night and that's it. So it's important though. I mean, we go out every Saturday night, not just sometimes.
Do
So
you go
I'd say
out
that's
with
our
do you
balance.
go out with friends or do you go
Yes.
out like with just as a couple date? Because my mom's always
Most
like, make sure you go out on dates. So Ron and I, my husband's name is Ron. We try to go out on dates as often as we can, and then
That's nice.
like a friend thing too. I would love to know that.
For us, mostly other couples. We spend a lot. I think a lot of it because of Shabbat. We spend a lot of time, and we'll have friends over on Friday nights too, but not as much anymore. Now that the kids are older, we usually let them have their friends over. Because we make them stay home on Fridays night. So they all have like a whole house full of kids, which is great. So then I don't really have my friends anymore. But when the kids were little, we would have our friends, family friends over with their kids Friday nights. We almost always go out with other couples. I'm yearning for that by a Saturday night. Like that's a time for me to see my friends. That's a time for him to have like guy time. And so we'll sometimes go out with 2 other couples, sometimes 1 other couple. In the summer, it tends to be I feel like we see more people. That's like you can be outside. There's a lot of boating in Minnesota. Minneapolis is like a big boating thing, so you can have more people, on a boat than you can at a restaurant.
Can I just say too, like thinking of something you said that I want to touch on, that I think is important is I get like how it is where you don't feel like you have room for more friends. And I think I would love to talk about that more with my listeners that you brought up that point. So once again, because I enjoy talking about myself, when I moved to this community where I live by the beach, I had always, like you, had lots of friends. You know, I'm still best friends with all my college friends. I went to boarding school. Friends with one of my very best friends I met at 16 in boarding school. We're still very, very close. But like the transition from us living in, like, my husband and I in West Hollywood to moving to the beach and not knowing anyone except his childhood best friend and wife live here. And they were like, "Oh, we're moving to the beach." And we were like, "What's that? Like, what do you mean we're at the beach?" Because we were city people, you know, like, I know that's weird to say in LA, but West Hollywood's that's kind of like a city. And I remember going to this like meeting to meet like new like moms, because I was a new mom. I had Sophie, who's was like 6 months at the time, however old she was, and I really wanted to get her into this Christian school that we go to still. Well, she graduated, and I walked in, and I just want to tell this story because it touches on what you said, and I would love like for you to talk to listeners and me about this, because I'm also using this as a therapy session, Nina.
Amazing.
Um,
Even though I'm not a therapist, but you know,
okay, but I feel
forget.
like you're one, and you're becoming one today on my podcast. But the women, like, I was telling my mom this, the women like did not even say hi to me. Like, I walked in, and I remember my daughter was like super hyper. She was like one of those babies that didn't sit still. And all the other women were sitting in the circle, and they all knew each other because they were on their like second and third kid. And I was coming in and I had a first kid. I also worked at the time. So I was like, you know, like in my working clothes, and they were all like in their sweats and whatever else you wear. And I just remember being so upset, like leaving the meeting because nobody would say, "Hi, I'm like, you know, Joanne," or "I'm like Susie, and welcome to our group." And it genuinely like made me angry. And I went home and I told my husband, I'm like, I don't even know why I want to send them to this or send her to this school, because they were so rude and not nice. And then cut to like, I took over the group at one point, and then I made a rule that everybody had to like say hi to the new mom coming in and welcome her.
Nice.
But tell me what you think about that, because I think that's an interesting point, not to be I'm still resentful about that, by the way. Hello, time to move on.
Well, no, they could have acted better. Your gut in hindsight was actually right, that it wasn't really a great match for you. I'm not saying that it didn't end up being, you know, good enough experience for your daughter, but you know, and no school's perfect. You trade kind of one problem for another. Like, you know, maybe the other school had nicer moms, but the teachers weren't as good. You know, like there's never a perfect fit.
I will say this, because I do have listeners that go to the school and whoever listens. But it's a great school for the teachers and staff alone. Like, I'm obsessed with them.
And that's who your kids are with, you know, every day. And that's what matters.
That's part of like what I'm so grateful for. And there are, like, again, amazing people in the community and at the school, but like anywhere, it just wasn't a good fit for her, like looking back. Yeah, but go ahead.
You know, what that story speaks to is exactly how we opened this episode, which was back to scarcity and abundance. Those parents, and it happens a lot, were kind of acting in a scarcity, like, oh gosh, and not scarcity about, I would say scarcity. People have a lot of fear of time. They are so fearful of, okay, here comes someone new, and now we have to like get to know this person. It's not even personal. It could have been anyone. Like, I don't even think that it was the issue is that it was you. They didn't know you. You could have any new person who came in. It's like, do we have to fit this person into our life now? Is this another person we have to include? Which is an unfortunate human instinct to be very protective of our time. And I think so we're pulled. So I find myself feeling that way sometimes. And I am a friendly person. I do still make new friends, but a little bit more carefully, because I'm like, okay, I'm barely seeing the friends I have. And so I get, as soon as someone shows interest, like if they show interest first, I sometimes clench up a little. Like, I can even feel myself physically clench up, like, oh my God, how am I going to fit in this person into my life, even though I like them? You know, how am I going to actually make that happen? And so sometimes people cut that off before it even gets to that, before it even gets to the point where you might even think like, oh, hey, here's another person to walk with or another person to have coffee with. It's like they just make sure that they cut it off. They make it clear that they're not open. But if you're in a school environment, that's so hard because it makes it feel so exclusive and cliquey. I think a lot of people lack social skills that if you have good social skills, we find it hard to understand, but it is real.
Yeah.
A lot of people are really horrific at small talk. They're just honest to goodness, not good at it. They're not good at reaching out for plans. Like I hear from people all the time, it's my number one SEO. Like if people are Googling something and they land on my website on accident, it's because they Googled something like my friend never reaches out or my friend never texts me first. I always have to text first. And I've done a couple episodes on that. And it's the same theme I'm trying to get at here is it's not necessarily because your friend's a bad person, a bad friend. They're really just not that organized and they're not that good at it. They're just not that good at it.
But also could it be like, she's like that movie, like she's just not that into you. Like, so for now, from all of the lessons I've learned in these years of like, I was in like my daughter's been in that community for 10 years because she went to preschool and whatever. I've learned that I'm pickier now too. Like I just am because of the lessons I've learned in friendships. If I don't like immediately like kind of click with somebody, it's almost like dating.
It is a lot like dating.
It is dating, but you're dating a friend. Yeah. If I don't like click with somebody and have something in common with them right away, I'm not mean to people about it, but I'm just like, I keep them at a distance. And I think that's healthy.
Yes.
But
and that's what people have done to us though, right? Like, so
Yeah.
those same people did that to us. And that's why I think I have a little more sympathy for the people, not sympathy, but understanding for the people that were kind of cold to me when I moved here.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are people who have seen that I write about friendship or whatever, and that I have not welcomed into my life that warmly. And I'm sure they're like, oh yeah, Nina's a real expert on friendship. She's so friendly. And it's like, no, I'm not trying to say that that's what I am, but I can't be everyone's best friend. But
no, it's
I'm
so
sure,
true. It's so
I'm
true.
sure I've been seen as cold to people or, exclusive or cliquey or, because I am just one person.
Well, you brought that up when I was on the podcast. I keep talking about your podcast too, but that it is true. We're human beings and we're heavily flawed, like we just are as people. So like if one day you're having a bad day and like somebody like I'm trying to think. I mean, I talk about it all the time. I can be a total bitch sometimes, especially if I'm dealing with something. I'm not always going to be nice. And then like if I were to have somebody say, oh, she's such a bad person, I'm also heavily guarded because of what I went through. The pain of that I still carry makes me more sensitive probably than most people. But it's just an interesting thing to think like, who are you to like label somebody? I'm talking about you for what you do when you're out there like trying to do something good for the world, Yeah. And so I think people need to remember that too. So let me ask you, like as far as like friendships go and like what you do, like what the podcast in general or like why you write about it, are there like specific things that you look for like to like topics? I know you talked about you have so much content. So like what do people like really reach out to you the most about? Is it friend breakups? Is it like how to deal with making friends? I would love to know that.
It's really those 3 buckets I mentioned and everything falls into them. Making friends, keeping friends is the biggest bulk. If you think about it, it's like, there's so much in there. And then ending a friendship on either end of it, either looking to end a friendship or getting the gist that someone's trying to break up with you and like what to do about it. And whether
I love that. Can you talk about that? Because I went through a friend breakup and I wish that friend would have done it in a nicer way. So,
it's so
go
interesting.
ahead.
Everybody has opinions about how they wish they were broken up with. And the truth is, there's just no good way because there's an argument to be made for having a direct conversation. Most of the friendship experts would say that that is definitely like the kindest thing to do, but the hardest thing to do. Because you can have more than one friend. So this idea that you're ending the friendship to the point where you are having a formal breakup, I mean, you really don't want to be friends with this person. Right. Because like you don't have to just choose one. You can have this person in your life, maybe at a lesser amount. But there's a lot of people who say, well, I wish I had an explanation. And I often will say, like, what makes you think you were going to get the real explanation? Like, a lot of people will not be that honest. So your friend may sit you down and have some sort of talk with you about why this friendship's ending, but I guess I would have a hard time trusting that you're really getting the full story. And now you're walking around with this half story. You might get the full story, but because most people are trying to be a little nice, they're not probably going to tell you all the things because they're trying not to be cruel.
What about though, like, I mean, I shouldn't have used my example because mine was, I mean, you know, the story and my listeners do, was so like atrocious, but like looking back, I mean, because she kept like reeling me in and being like, you know, all the things that she was doing. But I mean, I've kind of broken up with people in friendships before, and it is hard. Like you kind of like don't know, like you don't want to be like icing them out, but you
Yeah.
can't help it. It's a hard thing to do.
It's very hard. It's the ideal situation, I think, would be that you don't completely burn a bridge and that you find a way to, recategorize this friendship in your mind. And so you see the person a little less, and then it naturally gets to a place where there are some good memories still, that you haven't damaged all the good that there was, and that person becomes somebody who you just don't talk to as much. Sometimes that just happens not because there's been any problems, but because you live in different places and you both have busy lives. Gosh, I have so many friends that I only talk to once or twice a year, not locally, like people who live out of town. And if one of them tried to be like, let's have a talk every Friday, like I wouldn't be able to sustain that. But it's not that I don't love them or, wish the best for them, but we're just not in that place in life anymore. Do I need to have a formal conversation with them and say, listen, I just want to make sure, that we're never really going to be, daily, weekly check-in friends. Like, no, that would be so weird. I'm so glad that, and hurtful unnecessarily. I'm glad that naturally those friendships have evolved to their natural place. Like sometimes time is the solution. If it's an in-town friend who's calling you every day and you're just like, I do not want this person to be my daily check-in person. If they don't take the hint when you don't call back right away, I still think that's a place to start, is to just a little less communication. But if they're not taking the hint, then yeah, you're probably going to have to say, I'm not at a place in my life where I can have a daily or a weekly person I'm checking in with. I'm feeling really pulled in all directions. But I guess I would still try to let the person save a little face.
Because it can be so painful, for the other. It's like going through like a breakup with, my situation's different, I think. But I have gone through like friend breakups where it's just not a fit, and that's okay. And it's actually healthy to evolve as people and realize, as long as you do it like in a healthy way, we change, like we evolve. Yeah. That's why like a lot of times, I know you married at 23 and like, God bless you. My sister married at like, I think 21. I met my husband at 26. We're still together. But a lot of people get married in their 20s. And as females, especially, we just, and men do too, but we just change as people. Like the comparison between like 22 for me, when I was like dancing on like bar tops, like, thank God there was no social media, by the way. And me even at like 35 was like night and day, So that's what I'm trying to say is like, as couples, we change, as friends, we can change too.
Yeah.
And go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I think it's important to always stay open to new friendships. So that's why, even though I do worry, like I said, sometimes about my time, I've made some really close friends in the past couple of years, even because, to your point, we change, we evolve, and then you start to meet people who match where you are right now. And we need those people in our lives too to keep growing from there. There's a study that says, I don't remember who did it, that our friendships change. I think Jeffrey Hall out of Kansas, but I don't know for sure, that your friendships change every 7 years. Not necessarily like every person on your list, but that if you kind of reflect on your life and you think about who is really close to you right now, the people that you text back the quickest, that you text if you fast when you have something funny, even the people that you're sending like funny memes to, those people might not be the same 7 people that they were 10 years ago. 7 years ago is number. I got confused with the 7. It might not be the same 3 people that it was 7 years ago, because every 7 years we do tend to have like a natural turnover in who's close to us. And that's because we change and they change. You know, everyone changes. And so if you're so closed off, or, you know, back to that letting friendships end naturally, if you're so attached to friendships just because they were close once, it really damages your future potential to really bond with new people. One thing I didn't really answer, I think, as well as I wanted to, when we talked about like why I do this, or I explained how I got to this, but the why is like a mission I feel really deeply. And I end every podcast episode saying that when our friendships are going well, we are happier all around. And I really believe that. Think about, I mean, my God, Meghan, think about how miserable it was for you in that situation with your friends. And I'm obviously this went on for a long time, but even just like the daily, and you had other stuff going on. But I think about even when I know a friend's mad at me, or I'm upset with a friend for something, it like eats at us. It eats away at you. And what I do in a lot of my episodes, it's like we're just getting at these little, tiny little issues of like your friend forgot your birthday, or you feel like you always are the one, like I said earlier, who reaches out first. Like, well, how do we change that, the way we think about that? Or if we can't change the way we think about it, how do we actively handle it with our friend? Because we are unhappy when we're unhappy with our friendships. I have not met a single person who is happy if they're in fighting with their friends. It like ruins your whole life.
I told you this when we recorded with you. When I've said this to you last week. I lost my dad. I lost my sister. I lost my best friend. They all died like tragically in different ways. And when I went through the friend breakup and like the bashing, which I could share this. I mean, I'm still dealing with it. I just had something happen. I talked about it on your podcast like 3 days ago, where one of them is attacking me on social media, like crazy, like coming after a mutual, like not even a mutual friend, somebody she doesn't even know. I shared this. Might as well share it with my listeners really quickly.
Yes.
So, since you guys all know, and I've been very open about these women, and I do call them the Karens because that's the code word. I'm not going to use their names ever. It was a horrific friend breakup. And what I will say about kind of what you just said too is now I've learned so many lessons that I only am friends with people that like bring something to the table and talk about like important things. Whereas like we don't bash each other. Feel like my friends now, if I'm not in a room, they'll defend me. Anyways, I didn't have that in the old friend group. And it was like one friend breaking up and then like a bunch of women just like pouncing and then getting like the whole community to turn against me. It was awful. And I'm no saint. I know that. Like I've been open about like giving them the middle finger at carpool because they tore my heart into like little shreds. But one of them came after a friend of mine recently who's been doing like a lot of my social media reels. And she's one of the most wonderful people I've ever met and been supportive and like in the same avenue of talking about mental health, and sent her a text or a message over Instagram saying, I'm going to unfollow you. My friend doesn't even follow her. I'm going to unfollow you because you are supporting Meghan Judge. She is the most horrific person I've ever met in my life. Shame on her. Said something along those lines. So to have another person like, and this person was never kind to me, even when I was in the group of friends, she was always like, just not a nice person. People tell me now, like they walk by her, she gives people dirty looks, doesn't say hi. You're going to say I'm a horrible person. But when somebody says that about you, whether it be social media or whatever it is, I was up for like a whole night losing sleep.
Yeah, you just feel
because it's so
icky.
Freaking filthy and icky and gross. Like you don't know me. I'm a freaking great friend. I am, and I'm a good person. I'm flawed. Like I said, like I'm going to fight back. I'm Irish and Italian. You mess with the wrong girl. But
that's why I say this stuff is ageless and timeless, right? Like you're talking about, I assume, if someone in their 40s, like,
yeah, she is.
It's crazy. When when does it stop? It doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, I used to talk to my husband's grandmother when she was in the nursing home about waiting for a spot at like a bridge game. You're like waiting for a spot to open up, and because bridge is 4 people, and so there wasn't enough women to like make a second game. It's like she was just waiting to get in, and I was like, wow, it really never like they won't take turns, like,
Yeah.
it's like, nope, you got to find 3 more people. You got to wait for 3 more people to move in, and then you can have your bridge game. But it's timeless, ageless.
It just has to like justify the narrative, I guess, of like justifying like I am a horrible person because I have moved on. And yeah, I am pissed. They broke my heart. I thought these people were my friends. And I am mad, and I'm going to probably be mad for a long time, but like we all deserve the chance to rebuild our lives. And when you come up to, and her husband came up to me in a restaurant, it was messing with me, and I just gave it right back to him. It's just weird. It's not normal behavior. We also live in a 2-mile radius.
That's extreme. I really think it's extreme.
I
hear from a lot of people.
It's going to be a good book.
Yes, it is. I was going to say, I hear from a lot of people in pain. It's usually much more subtle than this kind of thing. It's like stuff they suspect. I suspect people are planning a trip without me, or it's less like in your face like this. Like that is really, I would never tell someone to put up with that kind of behavior. You hear me saying, you should let your friends do some things without you. I don't necessarily mean like plan a whole trip, but like a dinner, a couple people without you. That's different than this kind of in your face.
Yeah, my situation's like tricky and weird and does sound like a Lifetime movie, but I have work to do and evolve as a human, just like everybody else does. Like, did I badmouth them when they hurt me? 100%. Like, I'm human. But my question is to get back to you, but I had to bring that up because I thought my listeners would enjoy that little new piece of it. I don't even like talking about the Karens anymore, to be honest, because it just like drains out of my mission in life, which is to really like lift other women up and lift people up.
Yeah.
But what that whole friend breakup taught me, and I would love to know what things have taught you in life, is I never thought I would make friends again. I really didn't. I was like sitting in a, and I want my listeners to know that if you're going through a friend breakup or something like this, because I just heard a story about another mom that moved out of town because she was in this horrible friend breakup. I mean, that's not normal.
No, that's really not normal.
But I never thought I would be in the place where I am today, where like, number one, my friend stuck up for me with this woman and wrote this amazing email or message back and was like, Megan's great. Like, go away, basically, have fun. And then just the friends that I do have, like, I'm so lucky. And I never thought, like, drooling in my room in 2020 when nobody would even say hi to me when I went to Target and people turned their backs on me, that I would have the opportunity in my area to make friends again. I just didn't believe it. And so if you're listening, it will happen for you. And you might not have like 20 friends or be in a freaking group again being like taking like group shots on wherever at a dumb dinner, but it'll be like onesie twosies. And you should surround yourself with real friends. They say like the best idea is like, if you can count on your hand the amount of friends that you have that you trust, you're like super lucky. So can you comment on that? And then I'll shut up.
It really is true that you only need a couple close friends, and somebody that makes you feel seen and understood and appreciated for who you are. You do not need a whole group. And when people are looking to make new friends as adults, and it can be, I just want to review them for any number of reasons. Moving to a new city is really common. But even living in your same town, because something like, not necessarily like we said as extreme as yours, but it's not uncommon to be done with a group of friends, either because you're done, like maybe they're getting into stuff you're not getting into, or because you got divorced and like you don't want to hang out with just couples, and you find that the women aren't really including you. Like there's lots of reasons people stay in the same town and find that they need new friends. That I really advise people to never be looking for a group of friends. And I'm going to go one step further, to not even be looking for a close friend. You are just looking for a friend to start. And I'm like speaking to your listeners here. Like if you're in a situation where you're like, just, you're in a rut with friends for any reason, you're looking to grow, or you feel like you've evolved out of the friends you have, you're just being on the lookout for a friend that then will blossom, hopefully, with action, because every friendship takes a lot of action. It does not happen passively, to eventually a closer friend and then a really close friend. But no one starts as close friends. We forget that. Most of us who have close friends in our lives that we made as adults, it's hard to remember the childhood ones because those happen so naturally. You didn't start as best friends. Like, you may think you did, but sometimes, like, if you really were able to go back in time, like, that's not true. There was always that weird time where you're like, am I texting too much? When you're a really close friend, you don't worry that you're texting too much. That's new friend stuff. And you have to let that happen. You have to let those early weird days happen where you're like, I'm not sure if they like me as much. It is just like dating.
It's so funny. It's so much like dating, right?
It is. And it's normal because you don't feel that comfortable. But that's where friendships start. They don't start at the best friend. That's why you have to endure some small talk. You have to endure some of that because you can't go right into the deep stuff in real life. On a podcast, we can, right? But we can't in real life go right into it. I mean, you can, but it doesn't always work well. It's like too much, too fast. And get to know a person slowly. So
can I piggyback on that?
Yeah.
Because I think in like my own life, in this particular situation with a friend, we became like best friends fast, like too fast. I think sometimes it's like dating where you're like dating a guy and you're like, I love you. I love you too. Like 2 days later, that's not normal either. So if you're in a friendship, like let it be organic. This is advice from your old friend, Meghan.
Yeah.
And making a new friend. I took my time, like I was very picky with starting over. And it's like dating. You cannot just like jump in the sack with someone. Well, I guess you can. And usually it doesn't work out too fast.
Well, that's infatuation.
It doesn't work out too well if it's not an organic like dating situation. It's like that with friends. Not like I'm saying you're jumping in the sack. That was a horrible analogy, but whatever.
I think what you're describing is like that infatuation feeling that we get with dating, but you get it with friends too. You really do. That feeling of like everything's new and exciting, and you're not annoyed with the person yet. They haven't not shown up for you in any important way yet because they haven't known you that long. So it's very easy. I think people do this a lot to put new friends on a pedestal and to diminish the good that our old friends have been there for because they've messed up. We've known them long enough that they've been human. We've seen their human side. So almost every long-standing friendship has had some sort of kerfuffle of some kind, some disappointment. I don't even mean a fight, but a time that you've been let down or disappointed. There's a really wise Jewish educator I've had on my podcast. Her name is Rilchi Koval. And she said something that I just spoke to me so much. It was like probably 3 years ago already, that there are people in our lives, I'm paraphrasing, that we're not disappointed by. They never let us down. And those people are acquaintances. And they're fine. Then it's very nice to have acquaintances in our life. We need them. Actually, in COVID, that's the thing that it was found that we all missed the most, was because you kept in touch with your friends usually. It was like the looser connections that really bring a lot of joy to our lives that we miss. So no shade to acquaintances, but those aren't your friends. So yeah, your friends are going to let you down. The people who don't let you down and never bum you out, like those are just acquaintances. So if someone has let you down in some way, it means you care about them and they care about you. So, I mean, that we got kind of off topic, but I never want the message to be like every friendship should just be sunny all the time. It makes sense that if someone's important to you, that you're going to mess up a little bit.
I think too, and I know we're getting over the time, but I just want to say,
your daughter.
I know I have to pick up my last day of school, Nina.
Yes, ours was today. My son has like 6 friends over, and I was like, silence outside this office.
No, my older daughter's downstairs. She's out already, but I'm going to get my little Ella from field day. But I was going to say really quickly, I think that too, it's like a learning thing. Like we have to learn in life. Like you make mistakes in life and you pick yourself up. And it's like that with friendships too. So I'll give a quick example. So Jill, she won't be mad at me for saying this. We met at 16 in boarding school. We fight, we bicker all the time. We're like sisters. But we kind of had this little like fight where we didn't agree on something and we didn't talk for like 6 months because I was pissed at her and she was pissed at me. And I was like, I'm very overly sensitive because of all this stuff. And like every time I would talk to her, it would be about like, oh, I have a paddle game. And this was when I was like drooling in a corner and like barely wanted to like be alive. And she was stressed about that. And then, you know, we've been friends for such a long time and we're very different and we've changed and our lives are different. And she lives on the East Coast. I live here, but we finally talked about it. And like I was like, this was what was bothering me. And she was like, this was what was bothering me. And it kind of sounds like you went through this too.
Yeah.
And then we were able to be like, okay, well, that's how it is. And we're fine. And I was like, and I love you. And she's like, and I love you.
You're stronger for it. I've had that with a lot of people, not in a super dramatic way. Like there was the one college friend I referenced where we didn't speak for a couple of years, but I've had plenty of times where I've had to like put on my big girl pants. It's hard. And I don't think you need to confront a friend every time they've let you down. I mean, that's a little over the top. Like sometimes you just gotta give the benefit of the doubt, assume they've got other stuff going on and like let some stuff go. But if it's something that is pervasive in some way and you feel like they would want to know, like you're doing your friend a favor by giving them the opportunity. Like you gave her the opportunity and she gave you the opportunity to hear each other out, apologize and say, okay, let's move on. Like you rob your friend and yourself opportunities for reconciliation if you aren't willing to have just like the ittiest bit of discomfort. It's not even usually that bad. Usually it's the anticipation of, okay, like what is she going to say? Yeah. Having to like just say like the words that I was upset. We have a hard time saying that.
Having a conflict. Like sometimes I'm like, I'm not in the mood to be in a fight with someone right now. I'm just going to shut down. And I just think it's healthier and better to like talk about it depending on like what you think. But I do want to like close with, because I could talk to you. Like I almost want to do a second. I love you.
I'll come anytime.
I'm not kidding.
You're so sweet. I love you too.
I want us. We are friends. We're podcast friends. I want to close with a couple, like this last thing. What is the saying? If it was meant to be, set it free. If it was meant to be, it'll come back to you. Maybe it's like that with friends.
I know the saying, but I can't think of the exact words. But yeah, I think that does work for friends.
Right?
For certain conflict and
Yeah. So I needed to say that. And please follow Nina. Give everyone your website, your socials, and all of that, because I don't have my glasses on to see.
Yes.
I mentioned glasses.
The best thing is Instagram, Dear Nina Friendship. I'm really building that up there. I share a lot of funny like reels there and stuff too. Like I'm not always serious, although I am pretty serious. I was born serious. When I
like your 40, Can't Buy Me Love one. That was like my favorite movie.
Yeah, like I love that stuff.
Yeah, me too.
And I do a lot of stuff on my newsletter, which is just dearnina.substack.com.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for having you on, for coming on. And thank you for just like what you're putting out into the universe, because I think it's so important. So if someone's listening, please check out her podcast. It's really good. Reach out to her, follow her. I just adore her. And I'm so, again, grateful to Diana. In closing, keep going. You matter. Your story matters. Thanks, Nina.
Thanks.
Judging Meghan with Meghan Judge.